I want to ask you about part of the night's question, particularly the word deserve. What kind of newspaper does LA deserve? I could make a pretty good argument in my darker moments that this city doesn't deserve much of a newspaper, right? We don't vote much. The studies of engagement suggest we aren't particularly engaged with our neighbors and community compared to people in other places in the United States. People can. It's a habit. People choose to subscribe to neighbor. Our newspaper penetrations, even in the glory days, weren't all that great. Do we really deserve a great paper? Can we even have a great paper if we have that kind of sort of civic culture?
Well, I think it's very hard for a newspaper to serve a civic function in a city which lacks a strong identity. Los Angeles differs from a lot of other cities in the United States in terms of, I think there's a natural tendency of many residents of LA to not think of themselves as being from LA, but instead thinking they come from Sherman Oaks or Ladera Heights or Long Beach or Santa Ana. There is very little sense of either being part of a larger region or for people who do live in the city of LA to feel that they're part of a city. So there's a natural tendency in this city, I think partly because we're so spread out and because of the lack of civic institutions, not just a big city newspaper, but also other institutions that exist in other cities that get you to identify with a city. And so I think there's a natural tendency among many people to assume politics doesn't matter. Nothing that happens in LA City Hall or the Board of Supervisors really matters. My life goes on. None of this affects how much money I make or my business or whether I have a job. So there's a tendency to think for people to think these things don't matter. But the danger, I think, is if the newspaper situation or the media situation feeds that attitude, I think it just reinforces a very dare I say, narrow-minded point of view, and I think for things that are arguably really important for the city of LA, such as, for example, the fact that in the next 10 or 20 years, the biggest single driver of jobs, the biggest single producer of jobs in Southern California is not going to be the entertainment industry. It's actually going to be the Port of Los Angeles and all the cargo coming through the port, creating jobs in the Inland Empire and distributing refrigerators and TV sets all over the United States. That's going to be the biggest single driver of jobs. So people who live not just in LA but in Southern California need to understand that, and they also need to understand what's going on in Korea or Singapore or China or the Philippines or other places around the world that will affect what happens in the port. But if the newspaper isn't explaining that or telling that story, then my fear is a lot of people in the city are not going to understand big factors like that really affect how life is in LA, but people are going to be either ignorant of it or oblivious to it.